The stars looked peaceful from the bridge of the ISS Defiance. Admiral Catherine Wright stood with her hands clasped behind her back, watching the distant pinpoints of light. She had served on this ship for 15 years, and not once had there been any real threat. The 3,000-year truce with the Zalaxians had held strong since before her great-great-grandparents were born. That peace shattered in an instant. "Admiral, we have multiple unknown vessels crossing the Neptune defense perimeter," called out Lieutenant Greg Foster from his monitoring station. His voice was steady, but his eyes were wide. Catherine turned sharply. "Unknown vessels? Show me." The main view screen shifted to display a formation of sleek silver ships. Their hulls reflected the distant sunlight in strange patterns, giving them an almost liquid appearance. Catherine recognized them immediately from historical records. "Zalaxians," she whispered. The bridge fell silent. For 3 millennia, the alien race had kept to their side of the Titan Accord's boundary. The agreement had been simple. Humans would remain within the solar system for 3,000 years, and the Zalaxians would leave them alone to develop without interference. The aliens had believed humans needed time to evolve beyond their primitive aggression. That time wasn't up for another 3 months. "How many ships?" Catherine asked. 47, Admiral. Classic war formation, just like in the historical records. Catherine studied the screen. Something seemed odd about the way the ships moved. Their formation was rigid, ceremonial almost. It looked exactly like the battle formations shown in museums depicting the First Contact War. "Communications, are they broadcasting?" Communications Officer Olivia Reyes nodded. "Yes, but it's on frequencies we haven't used in centuries. I'm trying to adapt our systems to receive it clearly." "Get me Earth Command immediately," Catherine ordered. As the connection was being established, she studied the tactical display. The Zalaxian ships were moving at a steady pace toward Earth, weapon systems active according to the sensors. "Admiral Wright," said General Frank Morales from the view screen. His weathered face showed no surprise, only grim determination. "I see our visitors have arrived early." "You were expecting this?" Catherine asked. "Not exactly, but intelligence. Picked up some unusual activity near the outer rim last week. We hoped it was nothing." He sighed. "The Security Council is meeting now. Continue monitoring, but do not engage unless they fire first." "Understood, sir." The screen switched back to the approaching alien fleet. Catherine turned to her second-in-command. "Commander Patrick Dawson, what's your assessment?" Patrick frowned at the display. "Their approach is textbook, Admiral. Too textbook. It's like they're following a 3,000-year-old manual." "I noticed that too." Catherine tapped her console, bringing up historical records of the First Contact War. "Look at this footage from the Battle of Titan. The formation is identical." "But that doesn't make sense," Patrick said. "They should have developed new tactics over 3 millennia. "Unless they haven't needed to," Catherine replied, softly. On Earth, Dr. Alan Martinez rushed through the halls of the Xenobiology Research Division. Emergency alarms echoed through the building, and staff members hurried to their stations with focused determination rather than panic. Humanity had been preparing for this day for generations. "Dr. Martinez!" called a voice behind him. His assistant, Olivia Reyes, ran to catch up with him. "The Defense Force has patched through the alien transmission. They need you to decode it." Alan nodded and followed her to the communication lab. As one of the few humans who could read ancient Zalaxian script, his skills were suddenly in high demand. The lab was filled with researchers staring at screens displaying the alien message. "Put it through to my station," Alan said, sitting down at his console. The message appeared on his screen. Strange, angular symbols scrolling in neat rows. "This is odd," he muttered, fingers moving across his keyboard. "What is it?" Olivia asked. "These transmission patterns. They're outdated. This is the communication protocol from the end of the First Contact War. They haven't updated it in 3,000 years. Is that significant?" Alan didn't answer immediately. He was too focused on the symbols before him. "They're saying they're resuming hostilities as the truce period has concluded. They're demanding our surrender." He looked up at Olivia with surprise. They think we're still the same as we were when the truce began. In Washington, D.C., the United Earth Security Council gathered in their underground chamber. Representatives from all 7 continental unions sat around the circular table, faces grim as they watched the tactical displays showing the approaching Zalaxian fleet. President Lauren Mitchell stood at the head of the table. The Zalaxians have broken the Titan Accords by 3 months. Their fleet will reach Earth orbit in 14 hours if they maintain their current speed. I need options. Chief Military Strategist Peter Blackwell had been staring at the display with an unusual expression. As the room fell silent, waiting for someone to speak, a strange sound filled the chamber. Peter was laughing. It started as a chuckle but grew until tears streamed down his face. The council members stared at him in confusion and growing anger. Is something funny about this situation, Chief Blackwell? The president asked coldly. Peter wiped his eyes, trying to compose himself. I'm sorry, Madam President, it's just... He gestured to the display. Look at their ships, look at their weapons signatures, look at their formations. What about them? Asked the African Union representative. They're exactly the same as they were 3,000 years ago. Peter stood up and walked to the main display. Their energy readings show they're still using plasma-based weapons systems. We haven't used those for offensive purposes in over 2,000 years. They're so outdated, we now use similar technology for mining operations. A murmur ran through the room as council members looked more closely at the data. Are you saying they haven't advanced their technology? The president asked. Not significantly, it seems. Peter's laughter had subsided, but his eyes still held amusement. They don't know what we've become. They think they're coming to challenge the same humans they fought 3 millennia ago. Silence fell over the room as the implications sank in. They have no idea, whispered the European Union representative. The president's expression shifted from concern to understanding. Get me Admiral Wright on the Defiance, and contact Dr. Martinez. I want to know exactly what message these aliens are broadcasting. She looked around the table. Let's show our visitors just how much humanity has changed. Back on the Defiance, Catherine received the transmission from Earth. As she listened, a slow smile spread across her face. Commander Dawson, she said, after the message ended, prepare to implement Operation Looking Glass. It's time to show the Zalaxians who they're really dealing with. Throughout the solar system, humans watched their screens and waited. After 3,000 years of preparation, humanity was ready to respond to the alien threat. And remarkably, that response began with laughter. Susan Garcia walked through the halls of the historical archives with her 10-year-old grandson Ethan. The boy stared in wonder at the 3-dimensional displays showing Earth's transformation over the past 3,000 years. Outside the massive windows of the archive building, the rebuilt landscapes of North America stretched into the distance, dotted with living towers that rose like giant trees into the clouds. Grandma, why did the Zalaxians think they could beat us? Ethan asked, pointing to a display showing the alien ships now surrounded by Earth's defense systems. Susan smiled and led him to a quiet corner with a view of the gleaming city. Because they don't understand how humans work, sweetie. They evolve very slowly. It takes them millions of years to make big changes. They thought we would be the same. She activated her neural interface, and a timeline appeared in the air between them. Look, this is how humans changed after the Titan Accords were signed. The display showed Earth as it was 3,000 years ago, a planet recovering from the devastation of the First Contact War. Billions had died when the technologically superior Zalaxians attacked without warning. The war ended, not with a human victory, but with what seemed like mercy from the aliens. They offered a truce, allowing humanity time to evolve beyond their primitive aggression. The Zalaxians placed a small monitoring outpost on Pluto and left the solar system. They thought they were being kind, Susan explained. But they didn't understand that humans don't need thousands of years to change. We adapt quickly. The timeline shifted to show key moments in human development after the truce. Within 500 years, humans had already terraformed Mars and Venus, creating new homes for their growing population. The Zalaxians were watching, Susan said, but they only monitored our visible technology. They didn't realize that by year 1000 of the Truce, we had developed quantum entanglement communication. That's how we talk without them hearing us, right? Ethan asked. Exactly. The aliens couldn't detect it. We could communicate across the solar system instantly without them knowing. The timeline moved forward. By year 1500, humans had mastered antimatter synthesis and gravity manipulation. The display showed massive space stations being built around Jupiter and Saturn, harvesting resources from the gas giants with technology that bent the very fabric of space. By year 2000, we had developed sentient AI companions and neural interfaces like the ones we use now. Susan continued as the display showed humans merging their consciousness with machines, expanding their minds beyond biological limits. And by year 2500, we started engineering our own evolution, Susan said softly. Ethan touched his chest where his enhanced heart beat steadily. Like most children born in the last few centuries, he had been genetically optimized. Before birth, stronger, smarter, and healthier than his ancestors could have imagined. But the Zalaxians didn't change at all? Ethan asked. They changed, but very slowly. While we transformed our entire civilization in millennia, they might take millions of years to make similar advances. Susan pointed to a small display showing the alien homeworld, secretly recorded by human probes. They value tradition above all else. To them, the old ways are always the best ways. In a classified facility beneath the Atlantic Ocean, Colonel Jack Hendricks walked through a secure door into the heart of the Nemesis program. The room was filled with monitors showing real-time images of the Zalaxian homeworld and their colony planets. Data collected by stealth probes that had been observing the aliens for over 1,200 years. General Bradley, Jack said, saluting, the older man who stood studying a display of the approaching alien fleet. General Paul Bradley turned, his eyes reflecting the blue light of the screens. Colonel, what's the latest from our deep space monitors? Nothing new, sir. The Zalaxian civilization has remained largely static for the past millennium. Their technology has improved in small ways, but nothing revolutionary. They still use the same governmental systems, the same military tactics, and nearly identical ships to those from the First Contact War. The general nodded, unsurprised. And their monitoring station on Pluto. Still functional, but limited in scope. They've been watching our official broadcasts and observing our solar system from afar, but they've completely missed our more advanced developments. Jack smiled. They don't know about the quantum shield network, the consciousness transfer technology, or our ability to manipulate fundamental forces. Have they detected our probes around their homeworld? No, sir. Our stealth technology is well beyond their detection capabilities. General Bradley turned back to the display. 3,000 years ago, they nearly wiped us out, Colonel. Do you know what stopped them? The history books say they showed mercy, sir. The general laughed. That's what we let people believe. The truth is, they stopped because they ran out of certain resources needed for their weapon systems. The truce wasn't mercy. It was a strategic withdrawal to regroup and resupply. He pointed to the alien ships on the display, and now they've returned expecting to find the same primitive humans they left behind. On the Zalaxian flagship, High Commander Zuklar stood before a curved window, watching as his fleet approached the blue planet. Behind him, lesser commanders monitored their instruments with growing confusion. High Commander, said Subcommander Vernax, we are detecting strange energy patterns throughout the solar system. The humans appear to have constructed massive structures around all planets, including the gas giants. Zuklar dismissed this with a wave of his four-fingered hand. Expected developments. The treaty allowed them to expand within their system. It matters little. Their technology will still be no match for ours. But High Commander, these readings suggest energy outputs far beyond what their civilization should be capable of producing. Impossible, Zuklar said firmly. Our scientists have calculated the exact rate at which human technology would advance. They cannot have progressed beyond our projections. He turned to face his subordinate. The humans were barely able to reach their own moon when we first encountered them. Even with 3,000 years, they should only now be establishing basic colonies on nearby planets. Yet we are detecting artificial structures throughout the entire system, Vernax insisted. And there appears to be some kind of energy field surrounding Earth that our sensors cannot penetrate. Scalar's skin darkened in irritation. Primitive defenses. Prepare the main weapons array. We will demonstrate our power as planned. Back on Earth, inside the Security Council chamber, military leaders continued reviewing the Zalaxian ship's capabilities. Their weapon systems are the same plasma-based technology they used 3,000 years ago, General Richard Dawson explained, pointing to a detailed schematic. We now use similar energy levels for children's science education. President Lauren Mitchell studied the display. So they pose no real threat to us? About as much threat as a water pistol against a battleship, Richard said with a smile. The question isn't whether we can defend ourselves, but how we should respond. Dr. Alan Martinez entered the chamber, holding a data pad. Madam President, I finished translating the Zalaxian message. It's a formal declaration resuming hostilities. They're demanding our immediate surrender and listing our crimes against their empire. Crimes? The President asked. Apparently continuing to exist, Alan said dryly. The message references human technology and capabilities as they were 3,000 years ago. They think we're still using chemical rockets and basic digital computers. The President stood up. Decision made. Then let's show them exactly what they're facing. Authorize Operation Looking Glass. The Zalaxian fleet moved closer to Earth with weapons charged. From his command chair, High Commander Zuklar watched the blue planet grow larger on the view screen. He had studied the records of the First Contact War many times. He knew what to expect. Primitive orbital stations, perhaps a few defensive satellites and clumsy human ships trying to protect their homeworld. What he saw instead made his 4 eyes widen in shock. Earth was surrounded by a ring of massive structures that gleamed in the sunlight. Hundreds of ships of various sizes moved in perfect formation around the planet. Some were so large they seemed impossible, city-sized vessels that dwarfed his flagship. Beyond Earth, every planet in the system showed signs of human activity. Mars and Venus glowed with light from sprawling cities. The gas giants were surrounded by energy collection systems that bent sunlight into spiraling patterns. Hi, Commander, said Sub-Commander Vernax. The humans have constructed significantly more than our projections indicated. Zikalar's skin darkened with anger. It changes nothing. They are still primitives compared to us. Prepare main weapons and target their orbital defense ring. Yes, High Commander. The Zalaxian ships moved into attack formation. Energy built up in their forward weapons arrays, glowing with bright green light. On the flagship's bridge, weapons officers activated targeting systems designed to penetrate Earth's atmosphere and strike major cities. Weapons at full power, reported the weapons officer. Fire, ordered Zuklar. Green beams of energy shot from the alien ships toward Earth's orbital defense ring. Zuklar watched with satisfaction, expecting to see explosions as human structures were destroyed. Instead, something strange happened. The energy beams simply disappeared. They struck what looked like empty space approximately 10,000 kilometers from Earth and vanished completely. What happened? Zuklar demanded. Unknown, High Commander, the sensors officer replied, frantically checking readings. Our weapons fire appears to have been absorbed. Impossible. Fire again. Maximum power. The Zalaxian ships fired a second volley. Again, the energy beams struck invisible barriers and disappeared without effect. On the flagship of Earth's Defensive Fleet, Commander Samantha Powell watched the alien attack with calm interest. Her ship, the ISS Guardian, was a marvel of human engineering, a vessel powered by controlled singularities and equipped with weapons that could crack planets if necessary. But today, those weapons remained powered down. They're firing again, reported her tactical officer. Containment fields functioning perfectly, Samantha noted. Energy capture at 98% efficiency. She tapped a control on her chair. Admiral Wright, the Zalaxians have fired twice. Both volleys have been contained. Request permission to proceed with the next phase. Admiral Catherine Wright's voice came through clearly. Permission granted, Commander. Remember, this is not about destruction. It's about demonstration. Understood, Admiral. Samantha turned to her crew. Activate the mirror shield and prepare to return exactly 1% of their energy directly to their flagship's sensor array. Back on Earth, the Security Council meeting had transformed. What had begun as a crisis response had turned into something closer to a technical review session. Military leaders gathered around displays showing the Zalaxian weapons capabilities, many of them unable to hide their amusement. Their main cannons use focused plasma contained in magnetic fields, General Richard Dawson explained, pointing to a schematic. The energy output is approximately 1/10 what we use in our standard mining operations on Mercury. And these were their most fearsome weapons 3,000 years ago? Asked the Asian Union representative. Yes, Richard confirmed. They nearly destroyed our civilization with this technology. Now a first-year engineering student could build better weapons in their sleep. President Lauren Mitchell studied the display of the alien fleet. What about their defenses? Standard energy shields and armor plating, Richard said. Nothing. That could withstand even our lowest-level defensive systems. The president nodded thoughtfully. Dr. Martinez, have you completed your analysis of their communication systems? Dr. Alan Martinez looked up from his datapad. Yes, Madam President. As I mentioned earlier, they're using an outdated communication protocol. But I found something else interesting. He projected a new display showing signal patterns. They're broadcasting on all frequencies, including some we haven't used in millennia. It's as if they're trying to jam our communications by flooding old channels. Are our systems affected? Not at all, Alan said with a slight smile. We haven't used radio-based communications for mainstream purposes in over 2,000 years. Our quantum entanglement network is completely unaffected by their jamming attempts. The president turned to a woman sitting quietly at the end of the table. Professor Lee, as our leading expert on Zalaxian culture, what's your assessment of their actions? Professor Diane Lee adjusted her glasses. From a cultural perspective, this is fascinating. The Zalaxians are extremely ritualistic. The way they've approached, the formation of their ships, the timing of their weapons fire, even the content of their messages, follows their traditional war protocols exactly. This isn't just an attack. It's a ceremonial act. She paused. In their culture, the breaking of a peace treaty must follow specific patterns. They believe they're honoring us by attacking in this formal way. Honoring us? The European Union representative asked skeptically. Yes, Diane confirmed. In their society, combat is seen as the highest form of interaction between civilizations. By attacking us according to their traditions, they're treating us as equals deserving of proper respect. The president considered this information. And how will they interpret our response? That depends on what our response is, Diane replied. Traditional Zalaxian culture values strength above all. They expect us to either fight back with everything we have or surrender immediately. But we're doing neither, the president observed. Exactly. By containing their attack without responding aggressively, we're acting outside their cultural framework. They won't know how to interpret it. In space, the Zalaxian flagship suddenly shuddered as a narrow beam of energy struck its sensor array. Warning signals blared across the bridge. What was that? Zikalar demanded. Energy surge in our forward sensors, reported a technician. It appears to be our own weapons fire reflected back at us. Impossible, Zikalar growled. Scan the human defense ring again. Before the order could be carried out, a transmission alert sounded. Hi, Commander. We're receiving a message from the humans. It's being broadcast on all frequencies and in our own language. Zikalar hesitated, then nodded. Display it. The main screen changed to show a human woman in a formal uniform. President Lauren Mitchell looked directly at the camera, her expression neither afraid nor angry, but calmly amused. To the commanders of the Zalaxian fleet, she said, her words perfectly translated into the alien language. We acknowledge your attempt to resume hostilities. However, before this proceeds further, We believe you should be made aware of certain developments that have occurred during our 3,000 years of separation. We call this Operation Looking Glass, a chance for you to see clearly what you're facing. The screen changed, and Zikalar's 4 eyes widened in shock as the true extent of human advancement began to unfold before him. High Commander Zakalar stared at the screen in stunned silence. The human transmission showed images of Earth's true capabilities. The first scenes displayed planetary engineering on a scale he had believed theoretically impossible. Humans had transformed Mars from a cold, dead world into a lush green planet with oceans and forests. Venus, once a toxic furnace, now had clouds white as snow and cities floating in its upper atmosphere. This cannot be real, Zikalar muttered. These must be simulations or deceptions, the images continued. Jupiter and Saturn were surrounded by massive ring structures that harvested energy directly from the gas giants. Enormous space stations orbited every planet in the system. Some were so large they could house millions of beings. Then the transmission showed human technology, matter conversion systems that could transform any element into any other, faster than light communication devices, medical technology that had conquered death itself, and weapons that could, according to the human narrator, unmake stars if deployed. Most shocking of all was the revelation that humans had developed the ability to manipulate the fundamental forces of the universe: gravity, electromagnetism, and the strong and weak nuclear forces. Zalaxian scientists had long ago deemed such control theoretically impossible. "High Commander?" Sub-Commander Vernak said, his voice trembling. "Our sensors confirm that at least some of what they're showing is genuine. The energy readings from Earth and its colonies are consistent with the technology they're displaying." Zikalar's skin had turned pale, a sign of extreme distress in his species. "How is this possible? Our projections indicated they would be only slightly more advanced than when we left them." "It appears our projections were inaccurate," Vernak said carefully. The transmission shifted to show human ships. They operated without visible engines, moving through space as easily as thought. Some seemed to bend the fabric of reality around, them disappearing and reappearing elsewhere in an instant. When the transmission ended, the bridge of the flagship was silent. Finally, Zikalar spoke. "Contact the homeworld immediately. The Council of Elders must be informed of this development." On the Zalaxian homeworld, the Council of Elders convened an emergency session. 7 ancient Zalaxians sat in a circular chamber, their gray skin wrinkled with age. They watched the human transmission with expressions of disbelief and growing alarm. "This is impossible," said Elder Zertak, the oldest of the council. "No species could advance so quickly. These must be false images created to frighten us." "The fleet's sensors confirm much of what we're seeing," replied Elder Kravan, the head of the science division. "Their energy signatures are unlike anything in our records." Elder Travan, who had opposed breaking the truce from the beginning, leaned forward. "I have been saying for centuries that we should have maintained contact with the humans rather than leaving them isolated. Small factions of our people who studied Earth from afar tried to warn us that the humans were developing at an unprecedented rate. Those groups were dismissed as heretics and conspiracy theorists," snapped Zertak. "And now we see they were right," Travan said quietly. "Our mistake was assuming that all species develop as we do, slowly, methodically over millions of years. Humans are different. They thrive on change rather than fearing it." Back on Earth, Professor Diane Lee stood in the Oval Office explaining to President Mitchell why the Zalaxians had attacked in the first place. "Their entire society is built on cycles," she said. "To a Zalaxian, no agreement is truly permanent. The 3,000-year cycle is deeply embedded in their mythology as the time when the truth of strength is revealed." "So they always intended to attack after 3,000 years?" the president asked. "Yes, but not necessarily to destroy us. In their culture, treaties are temporary by nature, meant to be tested periodically. This attack is essentially a test to see if we've grown strong enough to be considered worthy partners, or if we should remain subjugated." The president frowned. "They killed billions of humans in the First Contact War." "I know." Diane nodded sadly. Their concept of acceptable losses is very different from ours. They view death in combat as honorable, not tragic. To them, testing our strength after giving us time to develop was an act of respect. Well, they've certainly discovered we've developed, the president said dryly. Yes, and now we must consider how they'll respond to that discovery, Diane cautioned.
Zalaxian culture handles unexpected outcomes poorly. Their rigid social structure doesn't adapt quickly to surprises. This revelation may trigger unpredictable reactions. Aboard the ISS Defiance, Admiral Catherine Wright was meeting with her
officers to discuss the next phase of the response plan. The ship's conference room offered a spectacular view of Earth and the surrounding space, including the contained Zalaxian fleet. Their weapons can't harm us and their ships can't escape our containment field, Catherine said. The question now is what message we want to send with our next action. Commander Patrick Dawson suggested we could simply destroy their fleet, show them the consequences of breaking the truce. That would be the expected response, Catherine noted. But is it the wisest? A young lieutenant named Ryan Cooper, who had been sitting quietly, raised his hand. Admiral, if I may make a suggestion. Go ahead, Lieutenant. Instead of destroying or capturing their fleet, why not show them hospitality? Ryan proposed. I've been studying Zalaxian culture, and the ultimate display of superiority in their society isn't destruction of enemies, but the ability to treat potential threats as non-threats. You're suggesting we invite them in? Patrick asked incredulously. Exactly. Ryan nodded. Nothing would demonstrate our confidence more clearly than welcoming them to Earth after they tried to attack us. It would show that we're so far beyond them technologically that we don't even consider them dangerous. Catherine considered this idea thoughtfully. That's an interesting perspective, Lieutenant. I'll discuss it with Earth Command. On the Zalaxian flagship, High Commander Ziklar received new orders from the Council of Elders. His four eyes scanned the message twice, hardly believing what he was reading. Prepare a delegation, he finally ordered. We are to accept any communication from the humans and respond diplomatically. A delegation? Vernax asked in surprise. Not a retreat? No, Ziklar said, his tone resigned. The Council believes a retreat would show weakness and potentially encourage the humans to pursue us. Instead, we are to engage in diplomatic discussions while the homeworld prepares defenses. He paused. Though what defenses could possibly work against beings who can manipulate the fundamental forces of the universe, I cannot imagine. As if on cue, a new transmission came through from Earth. President Lauren Mitchell's face appeared on the screen once more. High Commander Ziklar, she said, again speaking perfect Zalaxian. Now that you have had time to review our capabilities, we would like to extend an invitation. Rather than continuing this conflict, we invite you and a delegation from your fleet to visit Earth as honored guests. We believe it would be beneficial for both our civilizations to meet face to face after 3,000 years of separation. Ziklar stared at the screen. The human was inviting them to Earth? After they had tried to attack? It made no sense according to any war protocol he knew. Yet he had his orders. And frankly, he was curious. What kind of beings had the humans become? We accept your invitation, he replied, trying to keep the uncertainty from his voice. A delegation will prepare to depart immediately. As the transmission ended, Ziklar wondered if he was making the biggest mistake of his life, or witnessing the most important moment in Zalaxian history since they first ventured into space. The Zalaxian shuttle descended through Earth's atmosphere, flanked by two human escort vessels that looked more like works of art than military craft. Inside, High Commander Ziklar and 5 other Zalaxian officials watched nervously as the blue sky gave way to views of vast cities that seemed to grow from the landscape itself, buildings twisted like living sculptures, their surfaces changing colors and patterns that somehow felt both random and perfectly planned. This cannot be the same planet we encountered 3,000 years ago, whispered Science Officer Troven. Their cities show development that should take tens of thousands of years. Landing platforms extended from one of the tallest structures in the North American region. The Zalaxian shuttle settled gently onto the surface, and for a moment, none of the aliens moved. They were afraid, though none would admit it. "Remember," Zikalar said to his delegation, "observe everything, reveal nothing. We are here to assess their true capabilities." When the shuttle door opened, the Zalaxians were greeted not by armed guards but by a group of smiling humans led by President Lauren Mitchell. Behind her stood several government officials, scientists, and surprisingly, a group of human children. "Welcome to Earth, High Commander," President Mitchell said, speaking in the Zalaxian language. "We are honored by your presence." Sklar stepped forward stiffly, performing the traditional greeting of his people, a complex gesture with his forearms. "We accept your hospitality, President Mitchell." What followed shocked the Zalaxian delegation to their core. Rather than tense negotiations or threats, the humans welcomed them with a celebration. A massive technological showcase demonstrating human advancement. They were led through exhibits that displayed achievements that seemed impossible. In one chamber, they watched as humans manipulated matter at its most fundamental level, transforming simple elements into complex materials with properties that defied physics as the Zalaxians understood it. In another, they observed medical procedures that could heal any injury, cure any disease, even reverse aging itself. "This is our public science center," explained Dr. Alan Martinez as he guided them. "Children come here to learn the basics of universal manipulation." "Children?" Zakalar repeated in disbelief. As if to confirm this statement, they entered a room where human children, none older than what appeared to be 10 Earth years, were solving mathematical equations that would challenge Zalaxian master theorists. One young girl was creating a small contained star in her hands, controlling its fusion reaction with casual ease. "Hello," the girl said cheerfully when she noticed the Zalaxian visitors. "Would you like to see my science project? I'm studying how to stabilize microstars for portable energy systems." Science Officer Treven nearly fainted. Later, the delegation was brought to a formal diplomatic meeting in a grand chamber with views of the rebuilt Earth. The walls seemed to shift between solid and transparent, showing different landscapes from around the planet. Dr. Nancy Hill, Earth's chief negotiator, sat across from the Zalaxian delegation. "I hope our technological showcase has been informative," she said with a warm smile. "Informative is an understatement," Zikalar replied cautiously. "I must ask, why are your people not angry about our attack? Why show us hospitality instead of strength?" "But we are showing you strength," Nancy replied. "The greatest strength isn't the ability to destroy, but the confidence to welcome those who intended you harm." She tilted her head slightly. "Besides, many of us found your attack somewhat amusing." "Amusing?" Zikalar's skin darkened with indignation. "Yes," Nancy said gently. "You see, for 3,000 years humanity prepared for this moment. We expected to face a vastly advanced alien civilization that had also been evolving at an accelerated pace. We built weapons capable of destroying stars because we thought we might need them." Her expression softened. "The realization that your civilization had remained relatively unchanged was both surprising and, yes, a relief." "Is that why humans were laughing?" asked Cultural Officer Nextral. "Partly," Nancy nodded. "But it wasn't mockery. It was the release of 3 millennia of tension. Your arrival was the most anticipated moment in human history, and when it finally happened, you found us lacking." Zikalar finished, his voice hollow. "Different," Nancy corrected. "Not lacking. Your civilization values stability and tradition. Ours embraces change and adaptation. Neither approach is inherently superior. They're just different evolutionary strategies." The meeting continued for hours. As it progressed, High Commander Zikalar's initial defensiveness slowly gave way to curiosity. For the first time, he began to see humans not as inferior beings to be conquered, or as terrifying superiors to be feared, but as a truly different form of intelligence, one that had taken an entirely different path than his own people. Finally, humbled by what he'd witnessed, Zikalar asked the question that had been growing in his mind since they arrived. "How did you achieve so much in so little time? 3,000 years is barely a moment in cosmic terms." Admiral Catherine Wright, who had been sitting quietly during the diplomatic discussions, leaned forward. Ironically, we have you to thank. For that. Us. Zaklar's 4 eyes blinked in confusion. The First Contact War and subsequent truce served as a powerful motivator, Catherine explained. Your attack united humanity in purpose, eliminating our internal conflicts and driving unprecedented cooperation. Before you arrived, we were divided into nations that fought each other over resources and ideologies. After you left, we had a single goal: survival. And you achieved far more than mere survival, Zaklar observed. That's the human way, Catherine said with a smile. We rarely aim for enough. Once we start advancing, we tend to keep going. As the diplomatic meeting concluded, President Mitchell proposed a new treaty between their species. The Titan Accord served their purpose, but it's time for a new agreement, one based on mutual respect rather than fear. What terms do you propose? Zaklar asked cautiously. Open communication, cultural exchange, shared knowledge, the president said. And most importantly, lasting peace. Not a temporary truce to be tested after another cycle, but a permanent alliance. Zaklar hesitated. Our people view treaties differently than yours. In our culture, agreements must always be tested to prove their worth. Then we invite you to test this one not through combat but through cooperation, President Mitchell suggested. See if working together proves more valuable than conflict. As the Zalaxian delegation prepared to return to their fleet, a human child approached High Commander Zaklar. The boy, about 8 years old, held out a small object. This is for you, the child said. Zaklar looked down at the gift, a simple hourglass, its sand slowly trickling from top to bottom. What is its significance? He asked, genuinely curious. It shows how we see time differently, the boy explained with the directness only children can manage. For you, 3,000 years is just a moment to wait. For us, it's time to change. Everything. He smiled. But both ways of seeing time are important, I think. Zaklar carefully took the hourglass, struck by the simple wisdom in the child's words. As the Zalaxian shuttle left Earth's atmosphere, Zaklar watched the blue planet recede. His mission had failed completely. They had come to conquer and instead found themselves humbled. Yet somehow it didn't feel like defeat. On the observation deck of the ISS Defiance, Admiral Catherine Wright and Dr. Alan Martinez watched the Zalaxian ships prepare to leave Earth orbit under escort. Do you think they understand yet? Martinez asked. Wright shook her head. No, but they will. She smiled as the alien ships moved away from Earth, no longer as conquerors but as neighbors. After all, we've got all the time in the universe to explain it to them.